what I do. I have like a long journey of how I was originally in the cannabis industry, doing all kinds of stuff in that world for a long time, and then that journey ended uh, kind of abruptly in a way, and then I eventually found filmmaking, kind of through documenting my journey in the cannabis industry in a way. So, and
There's
it's all kind
something.
of come full circle.
Oh yeah, I mean for sure. One thing that I kind of appreciate, especially like those documentaries, especially back in the day. Like you've seen this with like a lot of Japanese filmmakers going back like even to the 80s and 90s where they would just use a camcorder.
Hmm.
That's it. And they
Yeah,
would just record the city of Tokyo, just have simple conversations with people, go to a cafe, hang out with people that are playing chess. And it's very enjoyable. Like I'll tell you honestly, as a cannabis stoner, I can get high as shit, sit there, watch it, and it doesn't need to be great quality. I don't. Maybe you could explain this. There's something about like documentaries not being like a Discovery Channel or like Animal Planet, where it's just a camera and the person and the environment. Like pretty much that simple.
yeah, sure. So that a lot of it has to do with production, and you'll even see some films try to recreate that by using lower quality equipment, and the connection is more real because there's like a natural gravitation from humans to look at lower quality footage as like homemade, you know? And you have that kind of connection to home movies and things that you would shoot yourselves without all the fine tuning of knowing all what to do from a production standpoint. So when you do those kinds of shots and they're purposefully mistakes or you just don't know and you're just doing the best you can, there's like a connection that people have to it not being produced, right? And that sometimes feels more real, right?
Yeah.
So I think that that's part of what it is, and a lot of times also it's the content that you're shooting. Podcasts kind of experience this these days, where if you're shooting a conversation and it's not really edited a lot, that can really connect with the audience. So some of that also transfers over in documentaries as well.
Well, we definitely saw a boom the use of like particularly with CGI in films. I would say probably like, the mid 90s to about like the early 2000s where you had a lot of production that was being made, even animation, like just 2D animation that was just all CGI. And I'm not going to lie, like growing up as a kid in the early 2000s, yet there was like really great, but there was something as a child growing up and watching those films made before that even happened. Like for example, like Fox and the Hound, the Black Cauldron. Um, there, like to your point, there's something about where you could almost put yourself in the position of the animators that are drawing it, or like the
Sure.
person that's holding the camera and taking the film. Like you can almost put yourself in their perspective at the moment as you're watching it. Hope that makes
And
sense.
yeah, I totally understand. And I think that to a certain extent, uh, when you're watching those things, maybe some of the. Oh, sorry about that.
That's okay. We need a little distraction sometimes. It's
There we
good.
go. uh, so some of the things that carry through in art are the passions of the artist, right? And
Yeah.
so when those animators are drawing those older cartoons, there was a lot more hands-on uh, parts to those films, and I think some of that carries through in the actual way that it's perceived by the audience too.
I mean, look at even most recently, I think when they made Wicked, they use a lot of practical effects. And it's not because CGI is bad. It's because that they know that there is a magic of something being real. I maybe you could talk from your own experience, but there is something where when you're in the moment making those films, You feel a connection when you're doing it. Like, as you keep going and towards you get to the end, like, you may not see the full picture, but it starts developing, and, like, you almost morph with it. It becomes a part of you.
Yeah, a good storyteller can kind of do that with their story and kind of introduce the audience in a way where they emotionally connect with the characters, and then as the story plays out, you can take them on a journey, and that journey a lot of times is what we call the hero journey, where they face adversity, they overcome, or maybe they don't overcome the adversity, but the story plays out however it plays out, and you kind of go along that with the character that you kind of emotionally identify with. And for the most part, that's what audiences like to see. Most successful stories are some version of that, and documentaries are similar things too. Like you're trying to tell a story that the audience can connect. Excuse me, that the audience can connect with, and
Mhm.
so as you're doing these interviews and hearing these stories, you're trying to kind of get the emotional connection, and ask questions that you think other people would want to know the answer to or could relate to in whatever way. So yeah, it all kind of works together in emotionally connecting to the audience.
Oh, yeah, 100%. I mean, I could tell you from my own personal experience, being able to have different interviews with, musicians, artists. I've had even filmmakers that were in I had one filmmaker on, he lives in Germany, he's originally from Australia, and, you walk into like, "Oh, I know this." Like, "Yeah, I have an idea." But then when you, like, walk in and particularly even talking with you, you learn something that you didn't know before. It's not that, like, you were wrong, it's that you're able to now have more pieces, more information to be able to add to that story. To your point, particularly with heroes, right? There are stories where the hero is the villain. The hero is an anti-hero. A great example of this, I fucking love cartoons, is Deadpool. Deadpool is the ultimate anti-hero that has been like in Marvel and like comic book wise and stuff. But there's a reason for that. It's because you have these people now that they can look back. They can look at the history of the different types of characters Marvel has created through the 60s and 70s and 80s, and then create that character in the 90s. You needed all of that before in order to make that now.
Oh yeah, but I'll even say so that the Joker movie is probably the ultimate anti-hero, where
Ever.
this movie is, not like the others.
Not like Jack Nicholson.
No,
No.
not like any of the other movies they've made, really, and not like the sequel, and the kind of dark nature of this Joker character, and how everyone like loved this character, rooted for this character, and he's the bad guy,
Mhm.
and not lovable like Deadpool, where he makes great jokes. This is a troubled character that people identified with, and yeah, the stories, you know, those filmmakers did potentially the best superhero movie ever, and by some people's standards. Um, it's filmmaking is a beautiful art, and you can create whatever you want.
You know, to your point with Joker, I once heard this from somebody. I don't know if this is true, but this is what he told me. He said that back in the day, DC Comics, because they kind of came out during the 40s, which was World War II, there was a pandemic after the war, which is where people that came back, soldiers, they were very traumatized and they were showing signs of mental illness. There is an actual mental illness, which is talked in the Joker, where people can have this like uncontrollable like condition where they'll just start laughing out of nowhere. That is a thing. And there are, for example, it's I'm not mistaken, it's like a disorder. It's like a mental disorder that's caused due to trauma, and there's a certain way of triggering. I don't remember the exact terminology, but what he was getting at was that these artists, these cartoonists, saw this going on after the war. They saw all these people because they're interacting. Back then there was no internet, so if you wanted information, you had to actually go out to like a bar or go to a mall or just go out to an arcade or whatever, and they would see people acting like this and would fuel them to eventually be able to create these characters like Poison Ivy, like Joker, like Harley Quinn. I mean, think about it. They're all mentally ill. And these comics were made when? In the 1940s and 50s. I mean, people just came back from wars, you know? Of course that's the information that they're going to get from that. I don't know, I just wanted to.
Oh, you're
Yeah.
absolutely right. And life imitates art, and
Mhm.
sometimes art imitates life. And
Damn,
so
yeah.
all of it is kind of used together to create these stories. And um, yeah, I mean, some of the coolest stuff ever is inspired by, or kind of uh, you know kind of tell stories around those subjects. So yeah, that
But
makes
it
sense to me.
it has a stem of almost like from real life. Like kind of continuing this trend cuz I kind of like this. Even take something like Star Trek, which came out all the way back in the 60s. And now there are technologies that they kind of predicted, some of them are kind of more ish accurate, and we have them now.
Yeah, yeah.
And they
I was
thought about
talking
that.
about this just recently.
It's like Gene Roddenberry was really ahead of his time, like way over.
Absolutely. So, like, what I like to talk about is, so you have both ends of the spectrum, right? So, when you
Yeah.
look at like the holodeck or whatever it is, kind of primitive in comparison to what we have now, touch screens and all the things that they couldn't imagine, the technology that we would have today. And the Dick Tracy watch, our every single person's phone is like astounding compared to. So there's a bunch of things that like kind of represent the low end of the spectrum, but like um, we still can't like teleport like the beam me up Scotty just yet. There's certain things that they have imagined that are a little bit beyond what we're able to do. We don't have lightsabers yet. We're getting closer and closer every year,
Actually,
but
somebody did make a lightsaber. I don't
there
know if.
there are versions, but it's not quite the thing yet. Where you're
Yeah.
like, okay,
Yeah.
this is like there's no denying it, right?
Right.
But it's closer and closer, and maybe someday we'll be able to beam me up, Scotty. But we can't do that yet either. Um, I love the things that we do have that have been inspired by some of these movies, and it's
It's
a beautiful blend of
crazy.
all of it.
Yeah. I mean, even particularly like this is even more like I'm a car guy and I love cars. There are cars that existed because of movies. Okay? Like, believe it or not, Herbie, that beat bug, that's a real thing people do. Like they turn that into basically a road rally VW. It's notoriously famous from a comedy sketch movie from Disney.
Sure.
It's hilarious. It's just impeccable on how like almost reality and fiction kind of almost coincide with one another.
Oh yeah, and like you're talking about cars, NASCAR kind of came out of the Prohibition days where they were building these cars out to run from the police,
Uh-huh.
and created a sport, and created art that all comes around all of that too. So like it's all kind of feeds into each other. That's part of what I love about telling real stories, is that you can kind of expose some of those things too, because a lot of the things that become popular are trends or hype or certain things, and
Yeah.
maybe the exposure isn't getting there for some of the things that are important. And so you get to tell those stories. And also I do all these different strange phenomenon topics, and
I
I
love
like,
phenomenons. It's like,
yeah, yeah.
what
So
is that?
I will talk to people who are very new in the culture, and I'll give them the opportunity to get exposure for their new book or their new story, even though they're not, you know, a famous name in the industry. I still love hearing and talking to those people.
Yeah. There's almost like, I remember I spoke with a scientist. He was from Brazil, and he was also a chemist. This man was a genius. We're all about the artist. That is the whole purpose of this podcast, period. And you have a really valuable tool. You can share this with artists, people that are creative, someone that can enjoy this podcast and really enjoy the experience of Lost in the Groove. So, with that, let's jump back to today's episode, shall we? Genius. And I remember, like, we were having a conversation, particularly about alien species, and we kind of hypothesized this idea. He's like, "Why do we always theorize that aliens are humanoids?" I said, "You have a really good point." He said, "What if you had a planet that organically was metal, that so happenedly formed life? So that means that everything that comes from that planet that is organic or alive is metal. So they wouldn't form or shape or coincide with whatever we exist here on this planet." And I was like, "You have a point." Like, that's the kind of thing with Star Trek too, is like, I don't think there's that many humanoid species. We may be the only
Sure.
one.
There was a movie that came out recently. I can't remember the name of it, but they were like almost like a squid or like a octopus type thing, and
Which
they would
makes
talk
sense.
by like splatting their like these like almost like ink splatters on like a glass type of situation. And it was they ultimately had to decipher all these ink splatters because they were like hieroglyphics or like Japanese uh, handwriting. And so um, there have been little touches on these kind of theories. And then one of the popular like mainstream UFO theories right now is that these some of these things that people are seeing are not physical, that they are some sort of light entity or some other kind of energy creature of some kind,
In
where they
another
don't have,
dimension.
yeah, like maybe a spirit, maybe a demon, like they're some other kind of life that we're not traditionally familiar with,
Yeah.
because we are familiar with life having a physical body. But
Well, I'll
it's
I'll tell
interesting.
you, as somebody that was raised as a Jew, I remember, like, even in, like, the deeper stuff, they talk about where demons and angels live in the second dimension. So there's discussion already where, like, there are different dimensions to these things. So we can be in one dimension and they're in another. It's like almost when you look at a mirror. I'm sorry this is going to creep out a lot of people. My apologies. But when you look at a mirror, that's almost like an example of a second dimension and third dimension. What you're looking at is a 2D version of yourself in another parallel or possible multi universe. We don't know what
So
that is. We don't know
yeah,
what that is. We don't know how to travel between those.
I just did a film with a guy who has a book about a subject that he calls "The Space Between the Space." That's the name of his book. Our film is called Celestial Deceptions. It's on
Ooh.
YouTube. It's on. I don't know if it's on Amazon yet, but it
That
will
name
be.
alone is
Yeah.
just tattoo worthy. I'm just saying.
So his concept is that all of this has to do with frequency and vibration, and that anybody theoretically could tune into these places and be able to like perceive these things in a more physical way. Uh, so he has all these pictures of, you know, various different kind of energy entities that he has
Okay.
seen, and it's a fascinating story. A lot of the stuff I'm familiar with from mainstream science, where you've seen like, oh, certain sounds produce like a fractal pattern,
Yeah.
right? And you've seen that frequency and vibration. There is something more to that. We don't fully understand a lot of it, but there's certain theories on how these things can work that are mainstream science accepted as reality. So
Well,
it's an interesting story.
it's really I mean, the thing that like I always go back to is particularly with it's really hard to break down because when you're dealing with like just talking about earlier with octopi and squid for example, they may be alien. There may be a reason like there's a video on YouTube, I don't remember what it is. There's a research lab where they use octopus for multiple like experiments to test their level of intelligence. They're beyond intelligent. I mean, this one like figured out that there was a tiny hole. They hit a hole, okay? They put the octopus in there. Within a heartbeat, went right through the hole. Just came right down, right through
Sure.
the hole.
Yeah,
Was not even there. Crazy.
if you've ever seen one do the cloaking, that's also
Insane.
yeah.
Insane. You know,
Yeah,
and we
they're
just
incredible creatures.
and we eat them for sushi. But hey.
There's a bunch of stuff that's odd on this planet that who knows how some people think we are an alien creature, you know? So,
We might
uh,
be.
yeah, we're very different than a lot of other things. And there's an argument that we should have seen more evolution at this point than what we're seeing if we came from primates. But, it's kind of a fringe theory.
Well, they kind of busted the hole on the theory of before there was the belief that there were different species of humans, but they never correlated with one another. It was just once.
Right.
But then we now have been proving that there were different species of humans living and coinciding with one another. So, you know, I was even pondering this idea the other day. You know, this depiction, in particularly with biblical texts and older texts, of giants. We know that
Uh-huh.
Neanderthals were quite large. If Neanderthals, for example, interbred with Denisovans or interbred with Homo sapiens, could have made very tall people, which, I mean, there's LeBron James.
Yeah,
He's
yeah.
alive and real, a great example. I'm just
Hmm.
saying, Shaquille O'Neal, man's over seven
There's a
feet
really
tall.
famous, I forget who the guy is. He's like 8 feet tall. He's at like, when you go to Ripley, believe it or not, they got like a
Yeah.
statue of this
So
guy. There are real like giants, quote unquote. But there's also these theories that the Smithsonian has hidden giant skeletons. Um, there's
I want to be there. I want to
yeah,
go.
the
Let's break it.
Nephilim,
Let's
the
break in.
stories from the Bible of the giants, and there are these theories that giants used to walk the earth, and we don't have great evidence. They allegedly are hiding it, but I love the theories. I might someday do a project on giants, and yeah, when you do see like certain people, people used to be much smaller, and just in general, and then when you see some of the like certain large races like the Dutch people and other cultures that are abnormally tall,
Yeah.
for whatever reason, if those two cultures were interacting somehow, we know that the Vikings kind of seem to come here. um, it could have been something like that, right? It could
Mm-hmm.
have just been of like really tall humans that were
Yeah.
interacting with some like, you know 5 foot tall humans.
It's really interesting where, our understanding of ancient history particularly is very much with a modern setting. I understand that like we know how to translate hieroglyphics, and particularly like certain languages such as Old Hebrew. But they were written thousands of years ago. So we I if somebody would sit here and excuse me, would fucking tell me that they know exactly what it is to feel like somebody that lived 6,000 years ago, I would slap them because that's
Yeah.
impossible.
Yeah, I agree with that. Like, basically, we're totally different.
Completely
Um,
different.
we're well, there's there's certain things that are going to be innately the same, right? So like, we're
Fight or
basically the
flight.
same kind of
Yeah.
creatures, and we have arms
Yeah.
and legs, and we essentially operate in the same way, but we've become far more educated in all these various different ways. And
We don't
uh
murder each other for farmland.
yeah, yeah,
So sometimes, but not
we're
anymore.
primitive still in these same ways too. And it's a weird thing to be a human in 2025. And I'm sure it was a tough thing to be a human in 1805 or whenever.
Yeah,
And
your toilet was outside and your toilet paper was the crust off the tree.
and we were a
Ouch.
different thing, because as you kind of interact with the earth, you kind of become different. And who's to say if that I, I'm a proponent of, we need to get back to that we've kind of taken away all kinds of things unknowingly that were helping us be healthy humans. And the
Yeah.
more we kind of isolate our lives and uh, separate from what it used to be like, and what life kind of evolved to be over what was like hundreds of thousands of years, where we were pretty much the same thing for a long time, thousands of years at very least. And uh, then now we're this, and
Yeah.
100 years ago, life was very different.
Well, I could tell you even personally for myself, I was born 1999. The difference of life compared to me and somebody born 2005 is insane. Okay? Like I remember like I know I've said this 100 times. Like I remember dial up. I remember when people had landlines. I remember when Wi-Fi was a luxury. I remember when a cell phone had just a keypad and you wanted to text, you had to do that and then like all of a sudden everything just completely changed in like 2 years. 2010, 2011. So, like there's that too. There's like yeah, there's 100 years, but then there's like my life completely for a lot of people my age completely changed in like a very very short period. What I'm
Yeah.
getting at is we've been moving at an increasing rate.
Mhm.
Like I don't know evolution wise, but I would say like as a society wise.
Yep, you're absolutely right. And kind of culture moves quicker than our physical bodies are moving, and technology is moving along with that. And so you get a little taste of it when you go maybe backpacking, or you do these things maybe where you get separated from technology.
Hey, it's Dave, and I quickly just wanted to jump in and say if you've been enjoying the podcast, I'm enjoying this episode, if you can leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, that'll be so greatly appreciated. Because here's the thing someone might read that review and make the choice if they want to listen to the podcast. You get to help grow this podcast with us. How fucking cool is that? Let's jump back to today's episode.
Your technology doesn't work anymore, and you get a little bit away from it. But I grew up in days where we had no cell phones. We go to Disneyland, your parents would be like, meet back over here at this time.
Oh my god.
And
Yeah. Yeah. I know.
there
Yeah.
was a lot of things that we've kind of grown out of. But I bring up the term diminishing. There's something, the law of diminishing returns, right? So things can't always get better. Eventually, they're going to not be improvements.
No.
And how many things have we lost that were really just like the pinnacle of happiness? Technology, a lot of times the theory is that it's going to make us more comfortable or make things more convenient, and that will make us more happy, or maybe more able to pursue the things that make us happy.
In a way, yeah.
It's not always the case, is it? And there have been a lot of things over time where people have pointed those concepts out, and we have to kind of face it. Right now, pinnacle is our phones, and it's changed society.
Here's the mind bender. People say that like, oh, back in the '60s with Star Trek, they didn't have any computers. Yeah, they did. If you really think about it, the computer was always in their head. That's
Sure.
why, yeah, that's why they never needed to have a laptop or a desktop. They didn't need one. It was in their head. Just think about it. He would go computer, computer would immediately snap. That's Neuralink. It's in his head. Like that might be the next step.
Or was it Alexa? Can't
No,
even say that word.
no, because we got one in the kitchen, and it might go off. It's like the forbidden word, but
Yeah, I
yeah,
love technology. I love science fiction and all that stuff. When we do all the UFO topics and we do the strange phenomenon topics, I love getting into all of that kind of stuff. I even I asked all the UFO guys what their favorite UFO movies were, because I think that's interesting too, because some of those movies that are out there are pretty real, and some of them were based on kind of real people and things like that. So it's all fascinating. I like that subject. That's our
I think
most popular thing that we do. So
I think if you want to say movies, Alien.
oh yeah, that's a good one.
I, I mean, it's kind of realistic. I mean, that could happen.
Do you want to
I
take a
don't.
shot at what they said, the UFO researcher people?
What do they say?
I asked a variety of them, and then a few of them said different things. But so
No, I
they
want to.
they they went
Yeah.
with a lot of them said Close Encounters. So
Okay.
Close Encounters, there's two characters in the movie that are based on real UFO researchers, and so they love that, and they love that it was kind of close to some real theories and this and that. So Close Encounters is a big one for them. Another one was Interstellar. So that was I think Matthew McConaughey, and
I think so. Yeah.
yeah, and there's a lot of like kind of these concepts where they're interacting in different dimensions, and those are apparently really close to the real concepts. So they really like that one. Another one that they liked was Contact. So, uh,
Interesting.
Contact, yeah, Jodie Foster, right? And that was the one where they get the secret message. And I even interviewed one of the people that worked on that movie, like giving them some of the
That
data and
movie scared the
perspective.
living shit out of me. I watched it alone. I swear, I still get nightmares sometimes. It is fucking scary. I
I
don't wish
loved
that
it.
upon.
Yeah,
It was great.
it's a good
I don't wish
movie.
that upon anybody though. I really don't.
It was a little disappointing at the end. Everybody kind of knows there was a little. The alien isn't like great. And so there was that. But other than that, man, really great movie.
Different time, but it was made well.
Yeah, yeah,
Besides
I
that
like.
part.
I've it's grown on me more so since I originally saw it. It's one of my favorites too.
Oh yeah. I mean, like Close Encounters. I unfortunately I've watched like bits and pieces. I've never watched the movie in full.
Oh, really?
No, I've never watched it in full. But I've kind of I've watched a lot of sci-fi and alien movies. I don't know why it almost draws you in. Like the second you see UFO or extraterrestrial or there's an immediate thing in your brain that's like, my precious.
Yeah, people think we have a natural connection to that subject for some reason. That
Yeah.
maybe we come from that, or that there's something more to this story.
Well, you've heard of the stone ape theory.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and I people are like, well, but there's different parts of the world, and how could you say that because there are parts of the world that they I don't know, but our brains expanding that quickly, and you compare to other mammals, their brain expansion does not
Mhm.
align up. I think it was 3 million years or something like that.
Something like that. I've done a few different psychedelic medicine documentaries, and I'm currently working on one now. And one of the things I talked to a mycologist about was that in this country, he is finding all these different species of mushroom when he goes out in foraging in the forest. He said about 30% of the mushrooms that he finds have no name. that they might physically look like mushrooms that we know, but when they sequence them molecularly, they're different than their European counterparts. And so these mushrooms are all over the world. There may be different types of varieties and what have you, but one would imagine this experience could have been replicated multiple different places. So I think there is some value to the stoned ape theory. A lot of people also think it was cooking meat that kind of inspired this growth in the brain too,
I
which has happened maybe a similar time frame. So I
I
don't
would
know.
tell I would tell you as somebody that has used psychedelics, if you take them, you know that there is truth to this. There's something that they do
Sure,
to your brain where I'll be very honest, like I've taken Shroom multiple times. Every single time I've taken Shrooms, the person that I was before, I don't even recognize. It's
interesting.
like I wake up and I turn into a completely different person. I
I've
so
taken them a lot too.
I don't know if that does that to you, but it definitely does that to me.
Well, I've had those experiences definitely where it was really profound, and you maybe faced something and got direction that you were really looking for. I've also had experiences that weren't so profound, and you know, um, they were enjoyable experiences, but it didn't necessarily change me uh, for any sort of way. I'm
Yeah.
old now too, so when I do these things now, I'm kind of the same person that I think I'll always be to a certain extent. But yeah, I mean, there's a common thing that people feel where they say that being on certain things feels more real than reality, right? And I don't know if that's real. I've had some experiences that make me think that that's not, that it's just a perception thing. But then there are also experiences that make you feel the opposite way. And who knows what is possible.
Yeah, I mean, I even remember like particularly with peyote, which is where every single person that I've spoken to that has taken it has had like a different experience. It's all around music, but it's always like a different interpretation. Like for me, it was like sound turned into shapes, geometric shapes. So weight, like kind of what we were talking about before, like almost like wave and vibration kind of equal and mesh. So as you hear the music, you see new shapes and patterns. Another person said that they saw colors and lights. What I think what it is like almost like a tapway. You know, like we were talking about before, like there's the third, the fourth, the second dimension. It's like almost like a gateway. So what these psychedelics are doing is like turning, like almost tuning you in to the spiritual web or wire coming out of your brain, coming out of your conscience, and connecting into that.
Hmm.
What does that mean? Like, I don't know, but I think there's some truth to this. Like, they're doing something.
Sure, sure. There's like a lot of people working on some of these theories, and you mentioned peyote. So I don't have a lot of experience with peyote. I think that is mescaline that would be the active
Yeah.
chemical in peyote. I also have not
Hmm.
taken that just straight up either.
Don't recommend it.
Um, yeah, I've
You'll
done
have
plenty of DMT though, and
it's the worst hangover you will ever have in your life. I
mescaline, huh?
promise. Yeah, it's
Interesting.
horrible. Horrible.
Well, I love doing acid, and I love, other things,
Yeah. There's a lot of
um,
others
and
goodies.
DMT and what have you. I've done, and I know that there's all this research being done on DMT that I think is really fascinating right now. So I'll talk about one really quickly. I don't know a lot about it, so I'll just briefly kind of go over what I do know. There is, I don't know, remember even the name of the gentleman or the organization, but they believe that that the place that you go to on DMT is like a real place, right? And that the commonality of anecdotal things that happen during trip reports are not just coincidence. That these people are going to the same places. That's why they have similar stories and what similar experiences. And so they're trying to prolong the DMT experience. And I believe they've done that in some sort of way. I think
Yeah, they
it's like
have.
through IV or something.
IV drip.
And they're taking these people and trying to map out this place where
Mhm.
they think that they're going. And so that's interesting. I don't know that they've had a lot of success with it at the moment, but I'd love to hear an update as to what's going on with that. I don't know a lot about that whole subject. I
No.
did recently
Yeah.
listen to a podcast, though, from another guy that's making a documentary that
Okay.
I'm not sure. This theory is a little lesser known. It was like a popular TikTok recently, where they have figured out that they've got these like laser pointers or some kind of laser, and they are shining the laser on like a wall or some sort of a surface, and then they are seeing uh, characters like the Matrix, and they've got like this they've got a trailer to the documentary where they're like introducing people to it. They have said nothing to them. They're like, you might see something. What do you see? And then they're all saying the same things, right? I don't know how many people didn't say the same things, which is, you know, one other thing,
Bizarro. It's
if they're
like
only
entering
presenting the
Bizarro
successful
world.
evidence.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're doing all this stuff, and then like they're making these comments where they're like, "Oh, you can see it in this way. It's not." And like, and the guy doing it is like very analytical about it, and he's like answering all these like questions that you have in like these really kind of eloquent ways, where he's like taken, okay, we might think that this is the counter argument, and here's why it's not that.
Uh-huh.
And so it's really, really fascinating. I really would like to see this documentary. I'd love to talk to this person. But he believes that we live in the Matrix now, and that what he is perceiving is code, and that basically it's the kind of code that you would see in a simulation type of thing, and that he is revealing that somehow through being on DMT and then using a very specific kind of laser. Yeah, really interesting.
Well, honestly, there is some truth to that because if you really think about it, Mother Nature or our universe is an organic quantum computer, okay? Whether you want to I mean it literally takes cells on a molecular level and combines them and then creates different like I don't know all the terms and terminology, but literally like creates different forms of life. It creates different things. That's a computer. Okay? What is a planet? A planet is an organic spacecraft. No, it's not. Yes, it is. It has a core. It has a core, which is its power source. It has a rotation, which uses its sun as its energy source. Do I need to keep going? Like, it's kind of obvious that, like, yeah, we kind of do live in a simulation.
There's a
We don't
cool
know what the.
video,
Yeah.
Neil deGrasse Tyson sitting with like a bunch of like, I think it's astrophysicists or some sort of mathematician type people, where they're talking about DNA and how they've like done some sort of genome printing out of the DNA code, and they've found computer code in the DNA. It's a really interesting little video. Um, there's a lot of stuff like that where you start to get suspicious. Uh, what is
Yeah.
this all about?
Yeah, but you know what? It's kind of almost where, this ideology of a god or a being or an all, you know, we may be looking at this wrong. The universe in and itself is a superior being. It may be a thing or things we don't know that projects and creates in this form. Like our perception of what the Big Bang is very well may be the projection turning on because it has always been there. Our concept of, we as humans can't fathom something existing infinite. Never died, never was born, doesn't need to. We need to, not that thing.
Right, yeah, and hearing that there are infinities that are greater than other infinities is another concept that seems bizarre. But math is a weird thing, and
Yeah.
there's all these different things that seem impossible, but according to the math, we live in a really odd world that's mostly, air, this data that we don't even know what it is, the dark matter or whatever, and uh, an atom is mostly like just space, and
Yeah.
there's lots of weird the things that they're forget the name of the thing, but that uh, certain things only happen when you perceive them. Like if you aren't watching, they don't happen. It's
Mhm.
like there's all these weird things to science and life, and as we start to figure them out, uh, hopefully it gives us a more happy life, right? Because I don't know what you know. Seems like the ultimate point to all of this would just be to be more happy, but we're not going to escape the matrix.
I don't think you need to escape it. I remember I saw an image a while back where this artist created this picture of what a human being's vision of sight is from a bird's eye view. So, literally most of the image is black and the rest of the image is what the person is saying. And you realize, "Oh my god, like there's so much of the world around you you're not even paying attention to." And I think that you don't need to have the belief of, am I going to gonna go to heaven or hell? Or is there a God? I don't think it really matters. I think what really matters is to kind of understand, what is this world? What is this universe that we call? And if it is a quantum computer, if it is a projection, it is a matrix, guess what? This is better than any fucking holodeck I've ever seen on Star Trek. I'll tell you that right now.
Yeah, one of the things, if you've ever woken up in a dream, that can be really deceiving. Like I've had experiences through talking to these people where they're like tell you um, like astral projecting is a real thing. One cool concept is, so I'll talk to people from different kind of cultures and they'll reference things and I'll be like, oh, that's the same thing. They're talking about like the same concept, but it's not like they're not referring to it really as the same thing. So one time I was doing an interview with a shaman, and he had a yogi guy, like one of these yoga shaman type guys there, and he came over to talk after I was done filming, and we were just sitting around talking, and he was talking about how there's all these pictures of yogis levitating, and that they're fake. I was like, oh, okay, this is interesting. Where is he going with this? And so he was like, oh, you'll see them up in the air. And what they're doing is they're just like learning how to kind of jump up in the air. And then they take a picture and you can see their hair is like floating. And there's all these signs where they're just jumping up in the air. It's so obvious this isn't levitating. This is just some little game that they're playing.
Hmm.
But that you can levitate as a yogi. And I'm like, oh, okay. So tell me more, right?
Of
He's like,
course.
but you don't, your physical body doesn't levitate. What happens is your like spirit comes out of your body and you're like levitating outside of your body. And I've done these interviews with these guys that talk about remote viewing and astral projecting, and it is exactly the same story. They talk about this kind of, you get into these states, you like meditate, you think about these things for a certain while, and then you are able to kind of leave out of your body. And like even this guy, he's like, I've only done it once. I was really hard. It was really hard to get myself into that state. I'm like, oh, this is the same thing. They're talking about the same thing. And that makes me think, oh, then I wonder if this thing they're talking about is a real thing that we can all do. And so I've done some stuff where I'm like, I'm trying to do the thinking thing. I haven't really like learned exactly how, but then I'll notice like that if I'm dreaming, I'll like have a bunch of like waking dreams where
Mhm.
you're lucid dreaming, right? And I'll like realize in the dream, I'm like, this isn't a dream. And I'll be like, this is obviously real life. But then I'm thinking, but is it a dream? And I'll start thinking in the dream, like, is it a dream? And I'm trying to connect with my body that is sleeping. And like, and as that starts to happen, and you start to be like, oh my God, this is a dream. Like the how real it is before that moment is so convincing that you realize, oh, anything is kind of possible if you could get to that place, however you get there. And so all these stories of people doing these various things, it could all be real. It's amazing stuff what our brains are capable of.
I I haven't had the best experience with lucid dreams. For me, they've been quite terrifying.
Mm.
Um, what was real? Okay, I don't remember the name of the TV show. It was a TV show they came out with. It was basically where they have this job and they have to like get it removed from their brain. So when they're at work, they don't remember their outside life. But
Oh.
yet, I don't remember I'm
Was
gonna
that
have to.
like a Dark Mirror episode or something?
Kind of. It's from. It's an actor that was in Parks and Recreation. Do you know that TV show?
I saw a movie that sounds like that. Where they
His
go
name
to
is Adam
sleep.
Scott. Adam Scott. Wait. Hold on. Severance.
Severance, huh?
Severance.
I'm not super familiar with that. I'm not sure if I've seen it.
Um, but I literally had once. This was a while back. I had where like kind of that almost instance, and I was kind of like in an office building, and it was kind of like almost like from the '80s. Do you know what I mean? Like
Mm-hmm.
fluorescent lighting, very dingy.
Sure.
There was no one there. There was no one there. The building was completely empty. And I kept on going back from like, is this a dream or this is not a dream? It was terrifying.
There are videos that people have shot where they claim to like stumble into like a different dimension where they're in some sort of abandoned building, walking through it, and there's nobody
There was
there.
no
And
exit.
yeah, it's weird.
There was no
Um,
exit. There was no stairwell. And the elevator had a door. But you know how it like, you could see like the line that the elevator will, it was just a solid sheet of metal.
sure. I've had some negative ones where like I've woken up and I like couldn't find my car. I remember thinking my car is stolen. I've had my car stolen before, and so like I woke up and it had happened again, and I was like looking for it, and I realized, oh, I'm in a dream. I don't even own that car anymore. Like, uh, um, and I've had it happen when I was young, where I used to think I was naked at school, and I would be really terrified by these like really really vividly real dreams that like somehow I had ended up at school with no pants.
I, you know, just like an idea to throw out, it's very possible that when we go to sleep, it could be that certain chemicals in our body get released. Like we do know that
Oh,
there's
that's
DMT in our
happening.
body.
Uh-huh.
So it could be like almost where when your body's releasing this, you kind of like wake up. The problem is you're not supposed to wake up.
Right. They
You
have
wake
these
up in the
different.
DMT world.
Yeah, like they do a lot of studies on dreaming, and there's what they call like the deep sleep. I forget the exact term, but it is like this like healing sleep that if you eventually get to, that's where all the good things happen. And there's certain things like smoking pot kind of prevents you from get REM sleep. That's what it is. And
Hmm.
so if you are sleeping with like a light on in your room, you're not getting the REM sleep. And there's all these little things that set it off to where you don't get into that like deep sleep. Um, but that would probably be also where all these chemicals are happening also. And uh, we don't know exactly what dreams are, but I'll tell you what,
No.
the first person to create something that puts you into the dream state, like billionaire, trillionaire, because that's the most real experience I've ever had. And if you could control that experience, you could eliminate all forms of entertainment, basically. So I would
I
just do that every time.
I think like almost where it's like an illegal gateway. It's like something you're not supposed to do.
Yeah.
It's the input that the hacker puts in so you can crack through.
I I'll also say there's weird things that seem against the rules in the dream world. So
Yeah.
like I will wake up in the dream world and try to do some devious things and they won't let me do them. And I'll be like, "Huh, that's weird. It wants me to be a good person in this place." And
Yeah.
that, it's kind of a lesson in of itself. I don't try to do the devious things anymore. I try to just like fly and whatnot. And that flying in a dream is exactly what people have like I did it just like Keanu Reeves in the Matrix, where like I realized, oh my god, I'm in a dream, and I just like I kind of got down and I just flew up, and it happened just like in the movie.
I literally jumped off the Empire State Building on a mattress and an alligator on the other end.
Whoa,
Uh-huh. I'll never
terrifying!
forget. Like I literally felt like I was like falling down and like I got this alligator that looks nasty and hungry and I'm on the other side of this mattress. Insane. But
Yeah.
yeah, falling alligator mattress.
So one other thing I want to bring up, I'm gonna try. I've been trying to do another movie about a thing that I find the most fascinating phenomenon that I've ever encountered. And I'm a very big skeptic on a lot of this stuff. So when I'm doing these stories, I'm somewhat debunking the concepts, and I kind of walk away from a lot of them not super convinced. Um,
Like
but
the lizard people in the sewers.
yeah, yeah, that Bigfoot dematerializes, or is a demon or something.
Or
Um,
vampires are in Hollywood and the
yeah,
art
yeah,
of
all of those
Kardashians.
things. It's hard for me to believe, but I had a friend introduce me to a book, and then I watched a documentary on it. The documentary's on Netflix, and it's
Mhm.
about the last chapter of it was human child reincarnation stories. And there's this uh, place at the University of Virginia where they study child reincarnation stories, and this scientist guy who has talked to like many of these kids.
Wait,
And
child reincarnation?
yes, and so they show these, so it's children who have stories of former lives that they lived. And so you like he's doing this interview with one of these kids. He's like, what I do is I try to go and debunk the kids. Most of them you can kind of maybe debunk, and that some of the stories though are very profound and seemingly real. Like me watching it, I have no other explanation. Like I'm pretty good at coming up with some other explanation. Like this particular thing, I have no idea what it could be, other than like tapping into information that is just like out there somehow. But this seems like that, not that. So uh, he, this one thing that he shot, he goes to this house where he has the mother and the kid. The kid is like, 5 years old, or very young, maybe 3 years old, like very young child. And the kid has been talking about some place that he's never been. He's been with his mom for the whole time he's been alive. He talks about these people and other places. So what this scientist guy has done is he's come up with two different pictures. He's got a picture of the real thing that the kid talked about, and then he's got a picture of a similar thing, but not the real thing that the kid talked about, real place or whatever it was. And he's going to show the kid the pictures, and like, either these look familiar to you. And then like, so in this movie they're like shooting it, it's basically like one shot, and you're like, you see the kid, he shows the pictures, and it is so obvious. The kid goes 5 for 5, no errors. That's the place, that's the place, this place. And when he sees the pictures, you can see his eyes like light up, like oh, that's the place that I know. And these kids, like some of the stories, they have like first and last names of their former parents. they like a lot of them were in like some sort of traumatic situation where they died, and it's bizarre. Like some of them have like technical knowledge of former professions that they were in, to where you're like, how would a child know that? And like it is so profound. I contacted the University of Virginia and they wouldn't talk to me. And so I really want to like find out. I want to like talk to somebody that's studying this. This is potentially the most profound evidence of that something supernatural that I've ever seen.
The
So yeah,
the proof the proof is this: we as humans are made out of energy, and we know this for a fact. Energy doesn't die. So we already know that our physical bodies die, obviously. But we technically are infinite. Okay? Like some version of you is infinite. So this concept of you dying and okay, that's now. You don't know what's gonna happen afterwards. But if that's the case, is it possible that, like I was saying earlier, that almost we have like a spiritual wire that like taps into another place? And maybe this kid got one of the wires from the previous round attached along with
sure.
it.
And some of the stories are like 80 years apart, so it's also like not immediate where like, oh, this person died and then they're immediately now in this child. No, like this person died, 80 years goes by, then there's this child. So where was this? And then they have memories, like they can reference like things from that previous time. Like how is that attached to, like, it's just, it's incredible. I'd love to like look into this more.
Yeah, the human psyche in itself is absolutely fascinating. Not because of just how vast it is. It's how little we know. We really don't know very much about ourselves. Like as much as like we have evolved as a species and how we have, there is a lot of things about us that we just, there's no explanation. There's like, we don't know.
And we're very different from person to person. As I kind of do these interviews and talk to people, and they've spent their whole life doing this one thing, they can be very dialed into that life. And, you know, humans are kind of moldable in that way too. So as we kind of focus on different things, we kind of become more uh, dialed into that and more dedicated to those things, and even physically more able to do those things. So the variety of life is incredible. And, you know, as I do my stories, I just try to keep an open mind, and anything's possible. I love uh, educating myself in this sort of way.
Yeah, and honestly, it opens our mind to different ideas. The thing is, when you theorize about things and talk about the unknown, yeah, a lot of this hasn't been proven yet. But there's a reason why a lot of people stem to these things. There's a reason why a lot of people connect to these things. It's not just because of storytelling, but there is some truth to it. It's coming from, well, you didn't give us a good enough explanation, so we'll give you a better one.
Yeah, for sure. I've done a few documentaries also about like what I call serious topics as opposed to the strange phenomenon stuff. Um, like if I discovered Bigfoot in one of my documentaries, I don't know that the world would change dramatically the next day. Maybe for some people, but like I did a mindfulness documentary, and I was like, wow, if everyone would do this, it would be a colossal change in everyone. Such an important and wonderful concept. We should be teaching this to kids. And I did diet and nutrition, and there, as you talk to those experts, there's scientists, PhDs, you know, various different, very mainstream educated people. They have completely polar concepts on a lot of these
Oh,
topics. And
yeah.
you know, you don't have one story that's like, okay, here's the facts. You know, you have a bunch of facts
A lot of
and
facts.
a bunch of theories, and, you know, evidence, but not necessarily causation. It's more correlation. And so some of that could be this, could be that. And it's fascinating to kind of learn all the different perspectives and just keep all that information with me as I proceed into other things in life.
Well, you know, you bring up a really good point because, like, particularly, like, we were told for a very long time that, like, saturated fats and meats, you know, and this whole thing of, like, eat margarine. And I mean, now we learn that butter is actually healthy for you and red meats are a lot better for you, and seed oils are terrible for you. Like, our whole idea of diet and nutrition, to be honest, is like kind of flawed, like, particularly here in the United States. It's
Sure.
bad. It's
Yeah, they
really
say that
bad.
the pyramid that we learned as kids flipped upside down, and that
Yeah,
what you actually should be eating is the things that were on the bottom. So
not at
it's
the
an
top.
interesting thing. Yeah.
Yeah. It's an upside down pyramid, like a
Hmm.
slice of pizza.
And I'll also say, like, as you kind of live life and you eat things and you create different problems within yourself, um, everybody's needs change too. So, like, maybe what I need isn't necessarily what you would need. And I've maybe killed myself by eating too much sugar and eating all kinds of bad stuff to where I have to be more cautious about that.
Yeah.
Whereas maybe somebody else didn't do that and doesn't have to be quite as cautious about that. And there's all the that changes in all kinds of different ways.
Yeah.
Food is uh, probably the main thing towards our health. And unfortunately, it has definitely been ignored. Our society and culture has like gone in this direction where we want pills, we want these like injections, we want all these like cures for
Yeah.
these things, and we want to just be able to eat cake all day and
Mhm.
uh,
I love cake.
have convenience of fast food and
Mhm.
not have to pay the consequences.
Nope.
So yeah, and it's different for everybody, but I hope that that changes as we kind of move on in the future and we learn more about kind of balancing our life with what we're supposed to be and what we like to be.
See, the thing that Star Trek got wrong was we're evolving in 2024. We're not collapsing.
Sure.
Mhm.
I think in a lot of ways that's true. Like, and hopefully people are participating in that. I know some people are still struggling, you know,
Yeah.
and
It's hard out there these days. I'm
it
not gonna lie to
is,
you.
and it's definitely getting harder and harder. But I think that a lot of people are working on that too. And the more you kind of educate yourself and change as the world changes, things can get better.
Yeah, it's all about having, honestly, like, a positive mindset. And it's not necessarily, like living in fucking Barbie land. It's more of having a positive, realistic setting, which means that there's so much that you can control and so much that you can care for. It's to be able to value your time, your perspective, what your needs need to be met. And it's not putting other people's aside, it's making sure you're taken care of before you can help others. There is that power dynamic that if you want to be successful, if you want to be able to, like, get through this, I think that is honestly the right approach.
Yep. Yeah, I love this the concept of being the hero of your own journey and trying to be the person that other people think that you are, aspiring to be that person, and trying to just be grateful for what you have in general. And all of those things, if you kind of utilize those things in your life, that that opens up new opportunities and it helps you to help other people too. And like you said, um, they say hurt people, but healed people can heal people, right? So the more you improve your own life, the more you can kind of share those improvements with other people, even if you're not totally healed.
Yeah. You don't have to be thing about it is you don't have to be perfect. There is something nice about perfection. But the thing that makes us the most human is the fact that we are imperfect. If you open yourself into a business relationship or a friendship or an actual serious relationship with someone and you are afraid of you not being perfect, I guarantee you're not going to be successful.
Oh yeah, I don't think perfection is an attainable thing. that you may have it for a moment,
A
but
millisecond, if
yeah,
you're
it's
lucky.
it's not something that's sustainable. And mentally, one of the things that I had to learn to deal with was uh, life. Like when I talked about diminishing returns, life isn't always going to be an improvement. And you might have the roller coaster of life where there's ups and downs. That's how it is for most people. And how do you deal with those downs? Do you completely collapse, or are you able to kind of deal with those moments where you don't allow the ups to affect you in such a dramatic way that it prevents you from being able to deal with the downs?
Yeah. I personally have found like you almost find a place of solace where you can look at it like, oh, you only have one peak your whole life. Or, the way of looking at it is that maybe you did have one peak, but maybe you have little mountains or little plateaus or little hills. It doesn't matter what size it is. What kind of matters is balancing the motion almost of when you're in that down, when you get back to whatever the up may be. There's like, it's got to be the biggest mountain. No, it doesn't have to be the biggest mountain. Like, that does not mean up. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah,
the a big up could be like, I don't know, fucking 7-Eleven Slurpee is 99 cents instead of $1.79.
sure.
Right? Yeah. Not gonna lie, that's kind of sweet. But you know, there's so many different things. I think like honestly, like limiting yourself down to just like, oh, it has to that is the only no, it doesn't have to.
Yeah, ultimately, it's about kind of perceiving whatever you have as
Uh-huh.
something good and being grateful for that thing. Whether it's the Slurpee, or whether it's some sort of work accomplishment, or
Mhm.
even just not having stress in your day for a day or something. Like there's all kinds of little ups and downs that happen. Maybe you're watching somebody else succeed and you're able to kind of enjoy that. There's a million ways to perceive things from a positive perspective, and it's easy to look the easiest thing is to look down on accomplishments, to be jealous, to kind of squash everything and find the bad in everything, to feel sorry for yourself and think that you're being mistreated, or that the world is against you, or that the odds are insurmountable and you'll never overcome whatever it is, and so why try? Like it's really easy to get into that kind of mind state and live in that world. So just having the courage to try and take it the other direction, and even just recognize when you're being that other way, and changing your mindset. A lot of times it's just as simple as that.
Yeah. I mean, it's a choice. You can either have the red pill.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, right.
um, I wanted you to talk a little bit more because you mentioned that you have some films in the works. What do you have currently working? What are some things you think would be interesting for some of the listeners out there?
Absolutely. So I got a bunch of different stuff in the works. I'm about
Okay.
to release a UFO crash retrieval documentary
Ooh.
where I interviewed a expert from Lockheed Martin. I'm not sure if I'm supposed to say that because he didn't want me saying it in the
All
movie.
right, FBI, please do not arrest me today.
But yeah, he's kind of studied these books and studied all these different cases of crash retrievals. And he had, I showed up to do the interview with him, he had like two telephone book size of folders of documents. And he has multiple levels of evidence that he requires for these cases. And he's trying to create physical images of these stories that are just in text. So uh, he has some of the original drawings that he's been able to use and have artists kind of create a physical rendering of these different stories. And just hearing the stories, he's such he's so good at telling all these different stories, and he knows them all.
Is it
He's
also
really,
his
really
voice?
wonderful. So yeah.
Some people have that voice when they're telling a story. You like almost you tune in. You're like,
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's good. He's got all the facts and he knows all the details. So that's really a good one. I'm working on a greater UFO project that I still haven't completed with all these different people
Damn,
from all
you're
these other
really
small
fascinated with
projects.
extraterrestrials.
Yeah,
I
yeah. Well,
love
it's one
it.
of the big ones that pays the money,
Yeah.
pays the bills. So, in addition to those,
Yeah.
I have a mentalism documentary that I was working on. So, mentalism is a part of magic where they kind of can make you say things or uh,
Like
like they
hypnosis?
read your mind or brainwash you. It's those kind of things. And
Okay.
I did a documentary about like the the art of doing all that, and then kind of society, and are we being brainwashed, and are these techniques that they use to do these tricks on people being used on us, and how do they see that in modern society. So it's a little bit about the fun part of magic and how all these things work, and then how are you seeing it in the real world. So some of that
Mhm.
was interesting.
Mhm.
um, I also have a documentary about the weed culture where I kind of reached into my past and I interviewed all these activists and freedom fighters from the old days when I was young and the people I looked up to that kind of got medical marijuana to become a thing. They fought for hemp before that, and
Uh-huh.
now it seems to have all been stolen from everyone with recreational marijuana, which they all somewhat participated in fighting for too. So I wanted to
Yeah.
talk about this story. Do they feel used? Do they feel how do they feel about the story of medical marijuana, and is it forgotten about now that recreational is around? It's not the thing that it once was, and
Well, we
it's really
haven't.
fascinating to hear all the different perspectives from all the activists over the years, and what happened to
Yeah.
kind of create the weed world we have now in California.
It's ever so changing. I mean, particularly even with the gangbangs, and with their cartels, particularly with the triangle, where they grow weed, there's a specific spot. It's bad. It's one thing to be able to give the perspective of why why tell people what they should and shouldn't do. Like, let people make their own goddamn decisions. Seriously. Just
Yeah,
let
yeah.
people, like, you let us drink alcohol and buy cigarettes, okay? Case proven. Just
Yeah, one of the things they brought up was that the packaging requirements on cannabis, they all have to have child safety packaging and all this stuff. But like Jack Daniels doesn't have to have
no.
child safety packaging.
Neither is a package of cigarettes or a lighter.
So yeah,
Kid
it's
can do
like
this.
a weird thing with cannabis where the laws kind of that they allowed for recreational seemed pretty restrictive, and they were just willing to basically accept it for money. Part of the story was when the were originally fighting this fight for marijuana, the argument was like marijuana can help people with AIDS, not necessarily cure them, just make their end of life better, and it can help people with all these other various different things, not even necessarily cure, but sometimes cure. And that wasn't a compelling argument. Nobody cared. They were like, "Oh yeah, interesting. We'll let Colorado and California do their thing, and just kind of watch from the outside." And they weren't in a big hurry to create these programs for their. Some of them started this and started that, but I'll tell you what. As soon as the tax revenue started to come in, it was a big change, and then everywhere wanted these places, and then all of a
Uh-huh.
sudden they wanted recreational because they didn't want them to have to go through these little hoops of getting a medical card, and all they saw, oh, we were charging the medical companies 10% tax, now we can charge them almost 40% tax. And so
It's
yeah,
crazy.
it was
It's
a
really
wild story.
I mean, it's also like you take even veterans where, a lot of them come back with trauma and PTSD and a slew of a lot of other things. And like there's clearly been research done with MDMA and ibogaine and there's a bunch of other things that clearly can help these people get back on their feet. And it's like,
Absolutely. Hmm.
nope, nope, I'm not approving it. We're
So,
not
so
allowed.
you actually just stumbled upon one of my other documentaries I'm working on, an alternative medicine documentary, which is not just psychedelic medicine, but other things like I
Yeah.
did a frog venom thing that doesn't get you high. It's called Cambo, and you just get
Okay.
sick and vomit, and it was kind of a horrible experience in a lot of ways. But I could see how it could be healing for a lot of people. And there's acupuncture and yoga and all these different things that are kind of fringe science, pseudoscience
Yeah.
theories on healing. But I think there's real healing that's happening for a lot of these people too. And is it all just placebo? I don't think that it is. I think that a lot of it is genuine healing that happens from doing these things. And so we're talking about these concepts, and um, microdosing is a big popular thing. There's absolutely no evidence that microdosing works. We can't measure any sort of thing that has shown that it works, but there is all kinds of anecdotal evidence that it works, and that's really compelling. Macrodosing we can measure, and there's all kinds of healing that's happening from people doing macrodosing, and all like you said, MDMA. I also like to point out the MA in MDMA stands for methamphetamine. So some of these drugs are things that people don't expect to be a good thing, but they are in certain cases. And I think LSD has a value for healing people. I think ketamine has a value for healing people, and obviously, psilocybin, that seems to be one of the big ones that's getting a big push, and probably going to be the first one that like they'll have sold as like chocolate bars. You already see a lot of the project products going
Mhm.
around. There
I
also
mean,
is mushroom products that are not psilocybin. So one of my friends has a company that has a legal mushroom brand, and the a lot of legal
I've
mushroom
seen those. I
brands,
was gonna say that.
yeah, a lot of them are actually mucimol, which is the Amanita muscaria variety of mushroom. It does not have psilocybin in it, and all
Oh.
the Amanita varieties have mucimol, and so it's a different chemical. Gets you high in a different way. It's not as enjoyable to a lot of people that are familiar with the psilocybin experience, maybe, but
I've
it's
seen
different and maybe
Yeah.
enjoyable to some. So, you
I've
know,
seen them all over here in Florida. I mean, because like, they got, like, mushroom chocolate bars everywhere, but obviously, they don't have psilocybin in them, right? Like,
some of them don't. Yeah, some of them are
yeah.
just illegal, and they're like rolling the dice, which is crazy. And there's even a store in Berkeley that's just selling mushrooms. You
Are you
know, it's
serious?
yeah, yeah. You can just go in just like the old medical marijuana days and buy mushrooms. And so,
Yeah,
yeah,
when we're wrapped up this, I might be making a trip, you
yeah.
know?
There you go, Berkeley, California. I'm sure there's other places too. They're probably doing that in Oregon.
Oh,
There's
yeah.
there's probably other places doing it too.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I honestly, like, I that was the thing that kinda like we were talking about earlier, is, like, being able to have that ability not only with storytelling, but real life experiences, things that people on an everyday day are experiencing, even to the far reaches of like phenomena. You know, these are people that are they're claiming they're having these experiences. It can be very traumatic, you
Oh,
know?
for sure.
But
And even sharing the experiences, like I've had to kind of talk to somebody recently where they were like, um, friends are like ending their relationship. Like they don't want to talk to me anymore because I like told them about my book, and they're like, oh, well, your book's a little out there, so they're probably thinking that you're crazy now.
I
So,
I'll tell you personally, like from an old real life experience, like I grew up in a Jewish community, an Orthodox Jewish community in New York. So when I left, I kind of had that like perspective where the rest of the world was insane. Okay. I never was used to the secular world. And when I would tell this to people, like sometimes it'd be like, what do you mean? I've had like even somebody I know talk to me like, yeah, I spoke to other people that came from the same place and they told me the same thing. I was like, I didn't think that was real. There's like this almost like disconnect where it's like, I know it's real. Why isn't other people seeing what I'm seeing, right?
oh, for sure, and like some of these things that I've seen. you want to have that experience so that you can feel the confidence in these concepts that the people who have experienced them have. um, and some of the not everything can be real, right? So like some of the people that I've talked to have to be, you know, misunderstanding these experiences in some sort of way, but
Yeah.
some of them might be the real thing. And you know, I just try to be open minded with it, and like hopefully in my life I'll maybe have one of these experiences that will open the door to one of these
Beam me up,
concepts being
Scotty.
more real to me. But as I'm just being able to talk to all these people that have them,
Yeah.
it's fascinating, and like it doesn't seem to be going away. It seems to be progressing. More and more different people having different experiences, and yeah, I love it.
In Buzz Lightyear's own words, in infinity and beyond.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
It's very true though, because you know what? The unknown is kind of spectacular. You never know who you're gonna run into, but it's worth the ride. I think it is.
Oh yeah, and you know, we keep getting these congressional hearings. It's like step by step, getting closer and closer, and then they'll
But
like
that
kind
thing
of
in Mexico,
yeah, yeah. So you see, yeah, the skeletons. Well, I'll tell you what. There's people that believe super hardcore in it, even still, and they like argue about why that was not what it was perceived to be, and that those are real skeletons. That's what they think. So
I mean, the fact that they didn't let other scientists be able to do their own research and study, I'm like,
yeah, yeah,
come on.
I know what you mean. But I think there is something going on with that where they like did something recently where they were all proud. They were all quite happy with some new discovery about these things. I
Never,
don't know.
it's literally never ending. It like
Yeah,
never
yeah.
has.
We all want it to just be some undeniable evidence where we can all just kind of be like, okay, there it is. Like,
Yeah.
it's always something where there's a little back and forth.
Oh yeah, there always is. Oh, listen, Jeremy, it's been an absolute pleasure. I was going to ask you actually. You mentioned your documentaries. Do you have a website or any social media
I
pages?
do, yeah. My website is theskyisland.com, and it's not as up to date as my IMDb page. So the most up to date is to just search my name and go to my IMDb page. Or even like if you put my name, Jeremy Norrie, into Amazon or into Tubi, you get a page with all my films. On YouTube, you have to type the name of the film with the word documentary at the end to find any specific film that you're looking for. Because just putting my name in gets you a bunch of podcasts and other stuff like that. Um,
Sorry.
yeah, yeah, hey, it happens. But my website is pretty good, theskyisland.com, and it has links to a variety of different ways to watch my films.
Love it. Telling you, we need more people like this because you know what? You, anybody could be a filmmaker. Anybody can tell a story. Can they be a really good filmmaker? Can they really take really incredible stories and make something really special?
Well, now's the time. The opportunity is
Yeah.
there. You can kind of just get a camera, go out there, shoot stuff, and put it out
Yeah.
on YouTube, and you're a filmmaker right there. So you can work on it a little bit more and get it out to a distributor just like we do. And it's really, the bar is not high. You can kind of just get out there and start making stuff.
Yeah. You really can. Listen, thank you so much, man, for coming on. Catch you in the next one. Bye.